Hello and welcome to the Future of Dogs podcast, a place for the whole dog world to come together and ask the big why and what if questions that will shape the dogs of the future. Join me, Hannah Malloy, dog behaviourist and body language expert, as we chat to some of the world's most groundbreaking professionals intent on enriching and evolving the future for dogs. This series is sponsored by Amplified Behaviour, my online video school where you can find quality dog behaviour and training advice at a fraction of the price, because I believe everyone should be able to afford the knowledge that they need to give their dogs the best life possible. Let's jump in to the next episode. Hello dog fans, and welcome to another exciting episode of The Future of Dogs. This episode is The Future of Dangerous Dogs Part 2, the XL Bully Ban special. And here with me, bristling already at the mere mention of the episode title, is someone who's always preached that although they've been labelled dangerous by law, they are not dangerous by nature. One of the founders of Don't Ban Me, License Me campaign group, Miss Sophie Coulthard. Sophie Coulthard is a leadership consultant, and she specialises in working with a little-known science called axiology, which is all about values. But until 2023, she was also just a regular dog owner of a young American bully called Billy. And when the UK government announced that the XL bully ban was coming in September, she realised her own dog's life could be affected if he was classified as an XL. Sophie began to use her TikTok account to discuss alternatives to a ban, and her message really struck a chord. She soon gathered up a group of 10 like-minded volunteers, and together they founded Don't Ban Me, License Me, a grassroots campaign, and launched a legal challenge to take the government to court in a race against time to fight the XL bully ban. The campaign has raised over £200,000, been recognised by charities and rescue centres as one of the most successful dog-related fundraisers in UK history, and built a large, engaged online community advocating for responsible ownership and licensing. The legal case is still ongoing, with the appeal currently in progress. It is September 2025, for those of you that need a time point, and it is my absolute pleasure to welcome you to the show. Sophie, how are you?
I'm good, thank you, Hannah.
It's
That was
really
great to hear back.
It's cool, isn't it? Look at your legacy. Absolutely outstanding. And you know, Sophie, you and I journeyed through a lot of this together, didn't we? I remember just sort of, we played media tennis a lot of the time during sort of September 2023 to, well, most of 2024, to be honest with you. It was a horrendous year, wasn't it? But
of course. Yeah, I think there was a solid group who were the sort of counter argument, let's say, to a lot of what the media was saying. And we were, I'm sure you were as well, constantly getting phone calls, quotes, appearing on TV shows, radio, etc. So yeah, it was a bit of a wild time. Surreal to look back on.
It was, wasn't it? And, you know, you'd just be living your life, and then one day another news story hits, and, you know, whatever you were doing the next day was just thrust to the side because you're just doing media for the rest of that day on the latest attack, or, you know, it was quite a shocking period of time. And I'd love to get into a little bit more about how that formed. But would you start us off, Sophie, and just answer all of our guests, bring their what if? So what is your what if question that would change the future of dogs?
Oh gosh, this is so tricky. I think it would be, what if we could look at dogs and their owners on an individual basis, rather than how we have things now, which is blanket legislation, let's say, that targets the masses. And I think if anything was going to make a real difference to responsible dog ownership, it would be to be able to have that individualization. That's my belief anyway. I don't know if that's...
Yeah, it's spot on. I think for many campaigners that have really not enjoyed breed-specific legislation for many years now, the mere mention that breed-specific legislation was going to get an extra dog added to it was just was the worst news in the world, especially as we'd really got to a good point with the dog bite problem campaign in June 2023. We were just about to give all of our beautiful recommendations to the government, and it felt like just at a really key moment this terrifying organisation swept in. But that's my perspective from an outsider's perspective. I don't have a bully breed. So if you tell us what it was like for you, like how did this start for you? Tell us your story.
Yeah, so I had a relatively young American bully. I think he was approaching 2 when a lot of the media really hyped up, which was the summer of 2023. So I had a dog that was an adolescent, so he was challenging, let's say, at that time, as they do start to get into their rebellious stage.
Bouncy.
And yes,
Yeah.
and there was story after story coming up in the news, and I remember it almost feeling like not another one. And I had done an interview earlier on with my dog with a radio station, and I think what happens is once your details are in, let's say, this media database, they get passed around. So as more stories were coming out, and as this strangely seemed to escalate, that no way, there can't be something else in the media today. And then as the politicians started talking about it, then it just escalated from there, really, in terms of kind of being contacted about it, but also feeling very much as an owner, what's going to happen. And I think there's part of that burying your head in the sand and thinking, oh, they haven't added another dog to the Dangerous Dogs Act for 30 years. But then thinking, actually, we're going to live through this now, something in a very different time. Obviously, when the pit bull ban came in, I don't remember it personally.
No.
And obviously we didn't have social media, and we didn't have news at our fingertips on the level that we do now. So I think there was a real hype. I almost describe it as a moral panic that seemed to sort of set in with the media. And if you know anything about how the media works now, it's all about clicks, and any story that's going to drive that fear and is going to get attention. So that's what happened, really.
It was terrifying, wasn't it? And yeah, it must have been. So they got you in originally as a dog owner. You were an owner of a dog that looked like the dogs that were in the news, basically. And then your voice just got sort of bigger, or you got more invested in, obviously, the end goal of this terrifying point of, well, this dog might actually be banned. And then everyone started to have conversations about, but what is it? Wasn't it? You know, there was a huge period of time where everyone was like, dogs like this, but it had never been typed. Like the XL Bully wasn't a dog really that anybody could properly define. It hadn't been typed. Nobody could describe it because it wasn't a recognized breed for the Kennel Club. It wasn't any of these things. It was just, people were going, what is it? Is it a pit bull cross? What did you experience when you were going through that? Like, where did you get your dog from? Actually, let's start there. Where did Billy come from? Was he a rescue?
He came from a family breeder. So I did get him as a puppy. They were a hobby breeder. I think they'd had 1 litter prior. So I guess a relatively normal way that people do get a puppy. I was aware that there was a lot going on in terms of breeding of this type of dog, because I had been to see puppies elsewhere and thought, not sure I feel quite comfortable with the setup here, or I had that alertness, I guess, in my mind of not everyone is a, let's say, dog-loving breeder who wants the best for the puppies. It was my experience with my dog. Wonderful people who I'm still in touch with today.
So did you go for an American Bully? Did you know what an American Bully was? Yeah. So you were like, I like this breed. I like the look of this breed. I know one, maybe.
Yes. I grew up with bull breeds, grew up with boxers, and really did want something that had a little bit of size to it, but had that kind of squishy face, I think, that we associate with bull breeds. And actually, I was living in London at the time, and I kept seeing dogs that I was thinking, is that Staffy? No, it's too big to be a Staffy, but it's similar, but it's a bit like this, but it's a bit like that. But you're exactly right. It's not like looking at a Dalmatian and saying, well, that's a Dalmatian. They do vary, and they vary in size and shape, and obviously size, which is where we get this XL term from. So for anybody who really doesn't know anything about this, you might think an XL bully is a breed of dog, but it's not. It's a type, it's a size, it's the length of the muzzle, it's the shape of the chest, it's that makes a dog an XL bully. DNA could say it's, I don't know, all sorts of different mixtures of different things.
Stuffy, rotty, yeah.
Yes, yeah. And I think that's where I'm sure we'll get there into sort of conversation about, well, what is the temperament then? And, how can you say all these dogs are dangerous when they're actually all made up of different bits of different things? But obviously there was a fashion, let's say, to breed them bigger, breed them muscular, breed them, but essentially the American bully as a dog was designed to be a companion family pet. And if you go to any sort of American website where this dog came from and read about the temperament of these dogs and their use, let's say, I've heard you talk about a pet being a job, a working pet.
Absolutely,
that was
hard
their job,
work. Yeah,
to be a companion. And my dog definitely fulfills what he was bred for. And I know people that might have paid attention to the media and must be thinking, what is she talking about? That's not at all what we've seen in the media, but that is what these dogs are supposed to be. And that is the experience of many owners that have American bullies in their families as a family pet, not as a status symbol, not as a protection dog, not as any of these things that we're led to believe. Pets.
yeah.
And that's been my experience with mine, which I guess made it all the more difficult when all of these stories start coming out, and then you even start to get things like family members or friends say, well, are you sure? Do you trust your dog? Do you really think your dog would never turn? Well, any dog can turn. Then you start to get into those arguments, but
yeah. And we have to be mature about, the conversation that was happening, wasn't it? I don't think you or I, Sophie, shied away from the fact of the matter that, yes, of course, human beings are capable of breeding large and aggressive dogs. That is possible. We know that. We can see that in scientific history. We just have to look at the fox experiment. If you breed dogs who are not people friendly together for a long enough time, you'll breed dogs who are really unpeople friendly. But I don't think that's what happened with the XL bully, or actually any of these dogs who were sadly attacking and in some cases killing people. I don't want to undermine the seriousness of that. That is scary. Nobody wants to live in a world where dogs kill people. Like that has always been the way. But I know, there's an amazing book about the American pit bull, even if we just go to the pit bull. And it was like, dogs that were bred for blood sport, fine, which by the way the XL bully is not. As you say, it was a show breed. It was a show breed. Lineage wise, is there a bit of pit bull in there? Almost definitely, a long time ago, but it's mostly mastiff, I would say. If you look at the physicality of the dog, it's a big, chunky, thick-headed dog. But pit bulls, if they were to attack humans in the ring, they were immediately put to sleep. So we've always made sure as a population that we will not take any time to be compassionate towards dogs who are aggressive towards people. However, in 2025, there are a lot of things that we need to be aware of when it comes to aggression in dogs. That 30 years ago it was very black and white. Now actually there's so many reasons why dogs might be aggressive towards people. So we understand, don't we, Sophie, that, big dogs could be considered to be quite threatening if there's a potential there that temperament is not people friendly and they've got the weight behind them to do the damage. That is, fair enough, a reason to treat these dogs moderately, or any dog that has the weight capacity to be able to do that level of damage. So we're not trying to shy away from that conversation, but you and I know, don't we, Sophie, that ultimately XL bullies are not they're not scary dogs. They are so soft, and for the most part, it's really difficult to get dogs like this to react towards humans at all.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, my dog is too friendly and overexcitable, and I think if he ever, sort of did any damage, it would be via a very firm wagging tail or an overexcited kind of jump up, that type of thing. And I know that that's my circumstance, and I completely agree with you. Fatalities are serious. We shouldn't be having fatalities through dogs, and I think it's such a difficult conversation to have, especially when you're all put on the spot in a media interview. But I think what we should all be aware of is that we are only told the story that hits the news. There's often a lot of circumstances behind the scenes that aren't talked about in the media. And I know through our legal challenge, we have seen a lot of the background to some of these attacks, and they're so unfortunate, but there are things there that you think, could these have been prevented? And a lot of the times they probably could have been. And I think that should be some focus there.
Can you tell us anything more about that, Sophie? I know there's one particular dog attack that I have a little bit more info on, that leads me to go to really back that particular dog and say this is a dog that was in serious physical distress. But is there anything you can share about the circumstances?
So there are a few things like that. And I think that there are also, I know people who have these dogs or have an XL bully will be probably saying to me, please say, were all of those dogs XL bullies? And actually all the amount of attacks that have been attributed, that's where it's very difficult to say, because sometimes these dogs were put to sleep before any evaluation of what breed. So it was just labelled XL bully. And as I've said already, it's not that clear really what an XL bully is. We're not DNA testing these dogs.
No.
So we are going off looks. There are questions around whether some of them were XL bully or not, but regardless, they were all big, powerful bull breed type dogs.
Sure.
There was, without going into any detail, there have been cases that have resulted in fatalities where there were no leads or collars found in the home, and that led police to believe that this dog or dogs were never walked, never taken out of the home. And I think you do have to think about what that how has that led there? That there are factors, I think, sometimes involved.
Yeah, really hard. I think one of the few dogs that I've had to unfortunately suggest might not do well to move on from their owner was a German Shepherd dog that I assessed, and I spoke to lots of other professionals about too, but he hadn't been walked for 2 years because his owners were disabled and they couldn't get out of the house. Honestly, frankly, they just couldn't, and they'd gone into a shame spiral and just not told anyone about it. And they got me in to assess the dog, and there were lots of ways that we assessed him, and there were lots of considerations about, whether he would be safe to rehome. And after speaking to lots of professionals, I was like, this dog is really very, very dangerous. And so, yeah, absolutely. If you have been a dog that has been kept in, then you're going to be a little bit nuts. And I know the dog, there was a West Midlands attack where a dog attacked 2 people in a petrol station. There was a lot of that footage, and I know for a fact that when that dog was caught, it had to be rushed to the vets, and it almost died because it was so dehydrated. It had been held outside on one of the hottest days of the year, and it flipped out, and that's what a dog looks like when it's having a panic attack, rather than a dog who has just woken up one day hell-bent on biting people. It's just not what dogs do. Aggression is a very costly strategy and not something that is just used prolifically. Now, there are some dogs that have drives. We know that, don't we, Sophie? There are some dogs that like to play grabby, bitey games.
Yes.
Terriers and also bull breeds. They like it. I like to play tug. Boxers like punching other dogs in the face. That's just what they do. It's a bit of a breed driver. But yeah, that is not what we were seeing with all of these dogs. All of them, I would say, have had some seriously horrendous upbringing. So for you, Sophie, how did the campaign form? Like, you had this dog, he's your baby, you're worried, I'm sure, that someone's just going to knock on the door and be like, I think you have one of those dangerous dogs. That must have been terrifying. Like, put us back in that story.
Yeah, and for me, he was an American bully. So when the ban was announced, I knew we were all a bit in the dark as to, well, how is this going to be decided? Do we have to say whether our dog is or not? Will it, having not lived through the previous ban or have any real knowledge about it, we didn't really know what was going to happen. I think, in fact, a lot of people panicked that their dog was going to be seized and euthanized.
Yeah.
And then I was posting on my TikTok account, which was a bit of fun that I'd started earlier on that summer, and that had started to get increasingly political. So mostly my anger at the media and also myself being misquoted in articles and some of the language that they use in these articles. I started to get a little bit more passionate in some of my posts, and that really took off. It was kind of a, let's say, right place, right time, maybe right voice saying what people wanted to hear. And I realized that my DMs were just going off the charts of people asking for, well, what's going to happen? I've read this somewhere. I've seen somebody post a TikTok saying all our dogs will be seized, blah, blah, blah. So I was really conscious of, okay, we're going to have to, if I'm going to do anything, it needs to be about supporting people to get the right information, because people panic and you're kind of in your own little world of, I have this dog and my friend with a spaniel is not going to understand. And so that was the idea. And I put a call out for help. I found 10 people equally as passionate as me from all over the country, and we got together and we started with just, what can we do? Let's start some social media that will put out the right information. We won't put anything out unless it's official. We'll help calm people down. We'll provide education. And that's how we started, until we were contacted by a lawyer who has XL bullies, the amazing Rebecca Strong, if I'm allowed to give her a plug.
Please do.
And she said, there may be some legal action that can be taken here. And it's not an appeal. You can't just appeal the decision and say, we don't like this ban. But where the law came into place so quickly, or it was decided so quickly, any new laws have to follow, I call it due process. I'm not a lawyer, so I'm talking in my language. And how could the government have spent the time to do things like assessments for equal human rights around people that might own these, equality type stuff, things like that? How could they have pulled together enough evidence to say that they have enough evidence to ban a dog? Have they done enough research on impact? It was all things like that. And that you can challenge with a judicial review, which is not saying we don't like this law. It's saying you've not done this law properly, is the plain English way of saying it. And there was an opportunity there that if we could challenge it and we could be successful, the ban could either be overturned, or it would force the government to go back to the drawing board and review. The danger there is always that they could have done the same thing again. That we knew that. Or they could have reviewed. And obviously, considering all the work, I know you've talked about it a lot on your podcast, a lot of the work that had been going on in the background up till that point, you would hope that if a successful legal challenge happened, they would go back and review. And that was always our hope. Maybe this could affect change. The closest thing that I had seen happen was, and I gave this as an example quite a lot, the Rwanda scheme, where the previous government wanted to send people to Rwanda, and that was challenged by a judicial review, and that was successful. And then the new government came in and scrapped that entirely, immediately. And I guess in my most hopeful optimism, that was what I hoped would happen.
Yes, of course, because we were heading towards a new government anyway. It was one of those things. And I mean, we've moved into the judicial review, and that is an ongoing conversation that I'd love to dig into. But before you get there, Sophie, I just want to say, like, Don't Ban Me, License Me as a campaign really we was so much work, and I love that you started with a solution. You didn't just go, don't do this. You said, don't do this, here's another alternative. That was always the rhetoric, is like, you could do that, or You could do that, or you could license them. Like, here is a solution that isn't this, terrifying, because for most people who work with animal welfare, all we could see was, you're going to ban this particular breed of dog, but it's not as simple as that. We're seeing, hundreds of thousands of dogs going into rescue or being killed immediately. Let's not beat around the bush. Some people just took the money that the government gave them to kill their dog through fear. And that is the crackers. And we were seeing vets with huge mental health crises having to mop up all of this mess, and charity groups, NGOs who had put loads of time and effort into providing evidence being pushed out of meetings and just told to walk away because they were still, pushing the breed specific ending of breed specific legislation. The government were just like, we don't have time for this right now. We've decided we're going to ban this dog. Really, really hard work. And you guys were, as you say, Sophie, really putting out quality public communications, really decent PR, fielding some super tough questions, kind of being that like Bernardo's really of the XL bully drama. That must have been a ton of hard work for you and the team.
Yeah, it was a whirlwind, to be honest. I think within a week of us forming, I think we had decided on the name, which actually came to me when I was driving to take my dog to see my dog trainer. And I was in the car and I remember calling someone and saying, don't ban me, license me. It does what it says on the tin. And then we'll figure the rest out later. We had so much support. Everything happened so quickly. We had people, like yourself, reaching out to me, having seen me in the media, and other people. Jordan Shelley, I don't know how he got my number, but he called me, spent about an hour on the phone media training me, essentially, on how to talk to the press. And it was just really kind of a all hands on deck. And then when the opportunity for a legal challenge came in, and it had to be done within a certain time frame, and you have to challenge within, I think it's like 90 days of the law being sort of drafted. I'm sure Rebecca, our solicitor, will listen back to this and she'll say, no, you've got that wrong, you've got that wrong. But so everyone please forgive me on the legalities. But we had a very short time frame, and then we knew we had to raise a ton of money, because who knows how much this is going to cost to take the government to court. And everything was kind of, lick your finger and stick it in the air and guess, basically. So we were fielding all sides, obviously owners, and trying to really support owners and build trust with owners, because ultimately they would be the people donating to us. And yet they were already having to think about neutering costs, exemption costs, muzzle costs, all of those things as well. So we had to build trust with those. We had to put ourselves as a credible entity to speak to the media, and then obviously support a legal team to build this challenge. What did that entail? What did we need to provide? So it was constant. It was up until late hours, and it was very much go for a good few months, I would say, until, beyond, but definitely that September to December of 2023.
Yeah, it was crazy time for all of you. You must have been exhausted at the end of it, because that is just running on adrenaline, isn't it? There's a time factor, there's a how many dogs, they've all got to be neutered next year, and oh my goodness, and all of that.
It was. We definitely had a moment where we had a lot of humour within the group. I will say that I think the power of us as a collective was the driving force. 10 complete strangers who were just brought together via dogs. And, we're all in touch. We've been, we message every day on our WhatsApp group, which is on fire most of the time, or it definitely was at that time. And I think the power of that we could find humour in those sometimes really difficult days, but we could also address serious things. We could support each other. We knew where each other's strengths were as well, who were the best few to do social media, who were the best few to sit down and look at drafting a letter that people could send to their MP, and that kind of delegation and trust there really did carry us through. But we had one dark day where the ban was getting closer, and we did have a conversation between us all where we said, dogs are going to die. We can't save all of these dogs. And some of the heartbreaking messages that we were getting that really did, I think, take a toll on us emotionally. I know there may be people listening who are in the dog world and have perhaps seen a lot of this before, and maybe you get hardened to it, maybe not, but we were all just regular dog owners.
Yeah, I don't think you can. I don't think you can. I don't think it's possible to get just used to this. I'm sure vets get to a point where they have to be fine around operations and things like that, and naturally when dogs get old and having to put dogs down because of sickness and disease. But I don't know a single vet that skipped to work thinking, I get to put down a dangerous dog today. Like that is not okay, especially with so much of a question mark around, are they even, scientists like me and many others were bringing the truth, which is scientifically true. Evidence says that there is a broader difference between dogs within a breed than there are between breeds. Okay, so between one dog and another, there is more variation between dogs in one breed than there are between breeds, which people are a bit mind blown by, because they're like, but golden retrievers carry and collies, border collie, and they chase people, and so bull breeds bite, and that's what they do. And it's like, yeah, that's true, but also there's more variation between individuals in a breed. That's what the science says. It's as simple as that. So for us to have gone down this route, and I think from my perspective, when we were doing all that media, the biggest issue is, but they all look like this dog. And I'm going, yes, but causation and correlation are very different things. Just because two things have happened at the same time doesn't mean that there's a direct causation. Just because more male drivers drive red cars and get in car accidents, it's not the red car that is the issue. We'd have to do a lot of science to prove that it's the car, because the car was red, that they got into those accidents, So maybe men of a younger age bracket are drawn to red cars. Maybe it's that, there's so many factors that can come into play. And so to ban a breed was just horror for so many of us, I know. So obviously you got to the stage where you were taking the government to court. Very big, very brave, very bold, and we thank you for taking that action. That is really strong moves, Sophie, and so many people I know were cheering you on, regardless of whether or not they did or didn't agree that the XL bully was dangerous. I think a lot of people were going, fair play, actually. That was made very quickly. That was a knee-jerk piece of legislation. And so what happened with the judicial review? Can you tell us a bit more about where you are now? Like, what's the next steps of that?
So we had back and forth many days in court. We first of all had to get permission even to take it to court, but that happens in court as well. So you have a first session, let's say, which is trying to get the permission. A judge then said, yes, you have an arguable case. So then will you move forward with the full judicial review? Luckily, we had an amazing legal team, and I will say as well, a pro bono legal team in the end. Wow. So whilst we were raising this money, thinking that it would be paying legal fees, but also if you lose a court case, you have to pay the other side's court costs as well. And you bet the government was showing up in court with sort of 10 lawyers and the full team that we were thinking we will carry the can for this. So we ended up bringing on an amazing pro bono legal team who are really passionate about dogs, and were able to then get a court costs capping order, which meant that the money that we had raised, essentially we wouldn't have to pay any more than that should we lose. So it was almost like, well, we might as well go for it. We've raised this money, it's protected.
Wow.
And hopefully the dream outcome would be that we win, and then we are able to do something fabulous with that money, donate it or whatever. But as it stands at the moment, so we got permission, we went through, we then ended up in court for the judicial review, which was 2 days in court. The judge took it away and ultimately came back siding with the government. So we lost in that sense, but our legal team wanted to immediately appeal because out of, I think it may have been, let's say, 5 parts to our argument, we were successful in some of that. The overarching result was the ban stays, but because we were found to be, let's say, correct, or we won on certain points, our legal team said, let's appeal straight away. I think the difficult thing by that point is obviously we've had a job trying to communicate to the general public, to dog owners, what's going on.
Yeah.
Why is that money still being held? Why did we win on some and not all? Why are we appealing? The ban's in place now as well, because obviously the ban came in during this time. But for us, we always raise that money to fight legally. So that is what that money was raised for, and that's what that money should go towards. Our legal team feel very strongly that the government should be held to account, and they want to continue. And so we're behind them with that. So we are currently waiting on an appeal date. It should be this year, 2025. And I think a lot of people have said to me, oh, well, the ban's here now. We're used to it. You know, what do you think will happen now? They'll never overturn it now.
Why do you think that is, Sophie?
I think people like to be negative because it makes things easier for them to cope with.
Maybe. It's one of the stages of grief, isn't it? Is acceptance, I suppose. I wonder if that's...
Yeah, but I think from our perspective, we can't do anything with the money. We can't go on a mission spending the money on anything or donating it. It has to be held for the court. So that's there. The legal team want to go forward.
It's worth it. We've got nothing to lose.
Nothing to lose.
No,
nothing to lose
exactly.
at this stage. So hopefully, you know, and we were there obviously at the height of the media and the news every single day. And yes, all of that has died down now. But I think anything that's getting that message out there. And the one thing that I have seen is in I would say, a turn is whenever I see an attack come up on a Facebook news profile, you know, on the feed, I always look at the comments, which I went through a big phase of not reading comments, particularly the Daily Mail and things like that.
Yes.
But I always look at the comments now, and it is so interesting how the comments have changed to be, obviously there's a lot of it's the owner's fault, not the dog's. A lot of when the dog is not a bull breed, people saying, well, if it was a bull breed, this would have been headline news, and now because it's a different breed, it's not. But also a lot of people just recognising that the issue is not as simple as banning a breed or banning a type of dog. And I think that's been interesting, that generally my experience with the public has been that they do get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when you present that alternative to them, they do understand, and they do think that a better solution is needed.
It's really tough, isn't it? It is tough. And you know what? It's not fixed anything. If we're honest, if right now, as it stands, dog attacks are still really high. This has not got better. Like, this has not helped anything. If we had started to import really scary dogs, if that's what we had done, then maybe that has stopped. And we'll never be able to measure that because we have put a stop to, you can't breed and own a dog who looks like this. Does that stop people from creating scary dogs out of different breeds of dog? Of course not, because genetics is still genetics and we can still do what we want. So there does still need to be a better solution. And in terms of the ban for you, Sophie, like how has that affected owners? I know that there were lots of dog owners who were struggling with like the neutering process. I'd heard that had been particularly horrendous for XL bullies. But what's been the fallout really since the XL bully ban?
Yeah, the neutering process is an unexpected hurdle and tragedy for a lot of owners because bullies seem to have this potential for some kind of bleeding issue, which apparently is common in greyhounds, or at least known in greyhounds. I think when you get this mass neutering that was all happening before certain deadlines, what vets were finding is that a lot of these dogs were having unstoppable bleeding. So dogs had died, or dogs were very nearly very nearly died from this. And, you know, that was obviously highlighted by the fact that there were so many of this type of dog getting neutered at the same time. We had 2 members of Don't Ban Me License Me who very nearly lost their dogs. So
shocking.
yeah, and something that I guess you don't expect. I was fortunate that the neutering process went relatively smoothly for me and my dog. I think some of the fallout that people don't think about when you have just a regular dog that you can take to the park, or you can go and throw a ball for, or you can put into a boarding if you need to, or you can go and stay in an Airbnb or a caravan, and you can drive for many hours in your car and get them out. All these things are made much more difficult by somebody who owns a banned breed, because first of all, your dog should be muzzled in the car. Your car's classed as a public place. That instantly put me off any long journeys.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Trying to find, dog walkers or anything like that, and even just having that trust, really. I think the thing, besides the practical things, I think the stigma is probably the hardest thing to deal with. And I can't speak to too much experience on this, and I fully recognize that is because I am a relatively well-spoken white woman, if people don't mind me sort of going down this angle. That I generally do not, or have not been treated poorly because of what my dog looks like. Even walking him down the road in a great big brightly coloured muzzle, people would tend to joke about it, and people would come and want to say hello to him. It's amazing how many people think your dog must not be dangerous, but you must be being forced to put your dog in a muzzle, which is could be a different challenge for some people. But my experience was relatively good. But I know that there are people who live in fear of a neighbour reporting them for something, or some kind of vendetta from an ex that could mean that one day they get that dreaded knock on the door and their dog is taken for whatever reason. And I think that is something that you shouldn't have to deal with as a dog owner, especially as a responsible dog owner. We get dogs. I talk about this a lot. Why do you get a dog? Why does anyone get a dog? I'm sure people will listen to this and agree how much your own well-being improves by having a dog. And I wanted a dog that forced me out of the house. I didn't want a dog that didn't want to walk. You chat to people. If you work by yourself, a dog walk is a way that you end up speaking to other people. You interact. Your dog brings you joy. You get nature. All of these things that you get a dog for are suddenly, for an XL bully owner, you're experiencing anxiety, you're experiencing people looking at you funny, you're experiencing all these challenges when you're trying to get your dog out and about to stimulate them or fulfill their needs. So it is really difficult. I hope that people can have empathy for that, even if they are listening and thinking, well, I've seen one of these types of dogs acting aggressively, or they've had some kind of experience. There are over 55,000 dogs registered as XL bullies, but there are not 55,000 dangerous dogs.
No way.
In those 55,000. So I think that's the real challenge for the owner.
And I think the government assumed when they first brought the ban in, I think they guessed that there'd be about 5,000.
I can't remember the number now. I'll have it written down. But yeah, it was a very low number.
It's like, wow, honestly, guys. And then, as a behaviourist, I'm watching all of you guys having to now exercise an incredibly athletic dog on a lead and muzzle. And for some people, I would say most, I would probably say 90% of XL bully owners can't afford to hire a private field to let their dog off lead. Like, that is a reality. They're not doing that. It's not happening for those dogs. So immediately, my question as a behaviourist was, how Dangerous Dogs Act 1991 do you match up with the Animal Welfare Act, which is newer legislation that says that we need to maintain the 5 freedoms of animal welfare, one of which is the freedom to exhibit natural behaviour? they just didn't match for me. I don't understand how these two things work together, and I think that is something that the government are long term going to need to chew over in a little bit more depth, because I really don't see how these dogs are getting the exercise they need. And also just muzzle training, that takes ages. To do it well, it takes ages to get a dog. Most dogs don't want to have a muzzle put on. Even when you've done lots and lots of training, they're like, oh, this again. This means I can't grab my ball, and I know that it's going to restrict my behaviour, and I'm not massively into it, to be honest with you. So there's a lot that you can do to make dogs, to pay them off really for having to wear something that they don't enjoy wearing. But very few owners took the time, I think, to do that because of the speed of everything.
Yeah, it was quick. Everything came in so quickly. And I think you're exactly right, that rush to get these things done. And I think the scariest thing is we still get messages from people who say, I have not walked my dog since the ban came in.
Oh,
and
my
that's
goodness.
And given the circumstances behind how some of these attacks have happened,
Yep.
It is worrying. And I think as a group, with some of the messages we were getting at the time, even before the ban came into place, we were concerned that we would see a rise even in XL bully attacks because of the conditions that were being almost put upon them and their owners.
And there's lots of things. As a behaviourist, you'd look at, things that are more likely to get dogs to bite you are rough handling, rushing them, having to interrupt them in the middle of doing something. So I know a lot of the dog attacks where people were injured, horribly injured, or in many of the cases of fatalities, these were actually dog on dog attacks, weren't they, Sophie? Like, they didn't, for many of these cases, they weren't originally going for the human in the first place. Like, what's that been like to kind of talk about? I'm sure that's come up with the community a little bit, like the maybe the association with bull breeds and dog on dog aggression rather than human dog aggression. I wonder, has there been any conversation about that?
It's always so. Any questions that sort of, certainly from the media that came to me that were asking outright about specific cases, I was always very careful not to answer, because anybody who's ever been involved in any dog campaigning will know that there are a lot of trolls out there who are going to pick up on everything that you say and twist it into a way that's not the intention. I think it's interesting. We also, as a campaign group, very much try to avoid anything that started to come into things like training and things like that as well. Just because we felt like we had a lane we wanted to stay in. We didn't want to open cans of worms where we didn't need to. We fell into them sometimes by accident, and then quickly
people throw them at you sometimes, don't they? Like, have a can of worms.
So yeah, it's tricky. I mean, it is tricky because then you do start putting labels. I know that we had people in our group that got frustrated with the couch potato label being put on bullies quite a lot, because they would say, well, so many are not couch potatoes, and it is really hard because you will get sweeping generalizations. My dog's very good with other dogs, very good. And so it's hard because you will generally see something that doesn't fit your narrative. I know for me, as being, let's say, the voice of Don't Ban Me, License Me, I was the sort of face in the media, and speaking on behalf of everyone. I was always trying to cover the ground that would have most people nodding along, saying she's saying the thing we want her to say. She's saying that how we feel. Yeah. She's saying what the impact has been for us. So I think that's where I tried to focus, really.
Yeah, it's good. It's really hard to do as well. You're speaking for so many people. I have to say, I get the satisfaction of being a lone wolf and being able to say what I think, what I'd like to say, really, and what I think most people need to know when it comes to the science of things. But yeah, I totally get that. And you're right. There's so much, again, there is more variation within a breed and within a breed than there are between breeds of dog. So to make generalizations like that is too much. I can't help thinking it is a conversation that we need to have more broadly anyway. You know, having come from rescue, even just Staffordshires, there's a reason why Staffordshire Bull Terriers are often alone in kennels. We don't put them in with other dogs in kennels because when they get frustrated, they can have dog fights, and those dog fights tend to be more problematic. But that has nothing to do with the XL Bully. I think that is a breed driver of bull type dogs, and that is something that is a conversation that all of us need to be able to have at some point. And looking at breeding dogs who are very pro dog social, very patient, have resilience. All these things are possible with decent breeding, and I'd love to see so much more of a focus on that in the years to come. That we're really thinking about breeding intentionally, very well. So for you now, as the ban it's come into play and people are coping with it now, like what's next for those that have an XL Bully? I'm aware there were so many that ended up getting their dog exempted, didn't they, Sophie, that actually didn't need to get their dog exempted. Like what's happening there?
Yeah, so obviously for us, the legal challenge is ongoing, and that's in the background, and that's in the hands of our legal team. So we have definitely tried to focus on the de-exemption process. So when the government announced the ban, they said if you're not sure, exempt your dog. So therefore you have to abide by all the rules of a banned breed, neutering, etc., muzzle. And if later on down the line you believe that your dog is not an XL Bully, we will have a process by which you can take your dog off that list, so a de-exemption process. Now Scotland, interestingly, even though they brought their ban in after the UK, also introduced their de-exemption process quite quickly as well. And I think the reason why this is important is because I think from when the ban got announced in September to December, we didn't really have any photos. As we've said twice on this podcast already, there's a lot of variance in what these dogs look like. So what was the government going to say is an XL Bully? Well, they can write a 2-page document with all sorts of words on it that could be any type of dog, some of them. There were some obviously clear ones, but you know, a phrase like big blocky head is debatable. Muscular body is debatable, but there weren't really any photos, and I think that was the tricky thing, that a lot of people then went, would my neighbour or would somebody down the road think my dog is an XL Bully? If I think that's the case, I will exempt my dog to keep my dog safe. And I think that's a really important thing. People exempted their dogs because they wanted to do the right thing by their dog, keep their dog safe. And I will say I was in this position as well, because when I was in the media with my dog, I ended up having a lot of comments from people with XL Bullies or American Bullies or bull breeds saying, your dog is not an XL Bully. Well, it's quite difficult to tell on TV and it's difficult to tell in photos, but it definitely got me thinking, is he? I'm pretty sure he's going to be, but is he? So people either exempted a dog like me. I know I have an American Bully, but I'm not exactly sure if he's going to be the XL, or people were exempting staffies or all sorts. Panic, really. And until today, well, including today, there is still no way to take your dog off the de-exemption, off that list. So people are following these rules when they may not need to. And I know we could just sit here and go, well, it's all stupid anyway, but ultimately people are following the law and they're doing what they need to do. So there have been challenges to the government on this, unsuccessfully at the moment. So sorry, I'm being interrupted. No, I'm apologies.
It's okay. I'm just going to blow my nose while we've got this break because I'm going to edit it anyway.
I'll do a big wave so they know that's the bit. There have been unsuccessful challenges on this, so we don't know what's going to happen. What we are seeing now, though, through pages like Save Our Seized Dogs that post a lot about dogs that have been seized and released and either typed as an XL Bully or typed as not an XL Bully, a free dog. And we're seeing that as a mixture of dogs we're getting a better idea of what is classed as an XL bully. Although I will say it does still seem to vary from county to county, police force to police force. So please, nobody hold me to account on this. There is still so much variance here. But what we are seeing is some police forces assessing dogs and saying, your dog is clearly not an XL bully. We will make a note on our system. Your dog can lead a relatively normal life in this county. And that, I think, shows some very good practice from the police.
Excellent.
And I also think it shows that they are possibly preparing for a de-exemption process, and they will already have some dogs maybe that they will be able to just say instantly, yes, we've assessed that dog already. I don't know. I'm thinking out loud here with it, really.
It's a great deal of hope, though, and that's exciting.
It
Sophie.
is hope for people. And I think I do equally feel devastated for people who are looking at a 10-stone dog thinking there's no way my dog will ever get off this list, because it very clearly is what we see as an XL bully in this country. So it's really tricky. And I would say to anybody who is listening to this and doesn't have this type of dog, but maybe sees dogs that they think, oh, is that an XL bully? Is it? You just don't know. I think it's really hard to make a judgment unless you are that dog legislation officer for that county and that police force. You really don't know, and an opinion could differ from force to force. So,
and it's also, just to underline this point one more time, because I think it bears repeating, completely bonkers to measure a dog as a breed of, like, if you look at two cockapoos, if you take a cocker spaniel and a poodle and you breed them together, F1, the first generation of those dogs, the puppies, will all look entirely different. So if what we're trying to do here is identify a breed lineage of potentially dangerous dogs, we can't do that by the way they look. We just can't. Like, it's an absolutely mental way of doing anything. And if we're just going to say it was just the XLs, well, actually, like, the lineage to make them big or smaller, really, that's just a very small variant that's made them a particular weight category. We're saying that the big, extra big ones, extra large ones, are particularly dangerous because they're heavier. I can understand that, because they're heavier. But if we're talking about temperament, we've just gone about this entirely the wrong way. It just seems absolutely bonkers to me. But here we are, living in this world with breed-specific legislation still very much in force in the UK, and we're all doing everything we can to continue to have reasonable conversations about what it might look like to actually safeguard the public instead. But it's good. There's hope.
Hitting the nail on the head there, because ultimately, what do we want? Less dog-related incidents, no dog fatalities, and less dog-related incidents, and getting a tape measure out and deciding that that dog is more dangerous because it fits XYZ proportions that a different police officer may disagree with anyway, is just the wrong way to go about it. And I think that brings me back to my what if from the beginning, is if we could, I know people will argue we don't have the funds, we don't have this, we don't have that, but if we could look at individuals, and have a really a more holistic approach to this, that look at the owner and look at the dog, and that's going to be your indication as to whether that dog could be dangerous. Then we'd be getting somewhere, rather than height, muzzle length, etc.
Absolutely smashing. And in terms of licensing now, Sophie, where are you on that? I know that it's two sides of the DBLM campaign. One was don't ban me. That's happened, unfortunately. We still have the license me. Where are you guys with that? Like, what's your hope?
You were the gem that came to me at some point during all of this ride and said, what about the license me stuff? Because it's all very well saying don't ban me, but you need to sort of figure out what your license me part is. And I think this is where some good work came from us, because we had conversations about, do we write a licensing model? Do we do this? You want to take it all on yourself. And then we realized there was plenty out there that already said what needed to happen in in a perfect way. So we started to sort of gently suggest what alternatives could be whilst keeping them high level. And it's all the things that are already being said by the likes of yourselves, the charities. And this was one of the real key things, is if we can all get on the same page on the basics, then there's a chance for movement forward, instead of arguing about nitty gritty, or our licensing model would have this or our licensing model would have that. For us, it was just about reinforcing that there are better solutions than banning a dog. And I think one of the key things that we did really successfully was have people write to and arrange meetings with their local MPs during all of this time. And we put together 5 pillars of licensing. We brought in a lot of the research that had already been done, and made it presentable. And people were finding opportunities. And these were people that were messaging us. And I'm particularly proud of this, I think, of us as a group, because we had people messaging us saying, I didn't even know who my MP was, and now I've just walked out of a meeting with them.
Amazing.
And I'm not a person who would ever put myself in this confrontational scenario. And I have presented this proposal to them. And I love that, because I think it's people advocating, it's people standing up for what they believe in. And one voice might not make a difference, but many can. And I think that's been a powerful part of the campaign, really.
And again, it's just so much success, and we're so proud of you, Sophie, because again, that is you teaching people how to campaign.
It's us.
Really,
It's
yeah,
us. I always try
know
and say it's not me, it's us. It's the group, and obviously it's the support from groups like yourself as well, and everyone else that's sort of more in this world that supported us and helped sort of almost like carry the wind in our sails to help carry us through the campaign. But
absolutely. And
but
you,
yeah,
you is the royal you, isn't it? You as a campaign group, you
yeah.
as Don't Ban Me, License Me. You really have taught people how to step into that sphere and have their voice heard. And, even if in the long term the decision hasn't been overturned just yet, that conversation is still being maintained. That community that you've built, that on its own is just so wonderful and such a huge bonus to the country that you guys were able to step into that gap and just be loved by you. And so what now, Sophie? What advice would you give for people who maybe have an XL bully and are living life right now, and the communities around dogs that they think that are interacting with XL bullies day to day? What's the future look like?
So I think for dog owners, I think a lot of people have realised that where they get their information from is important. And luckily, where we are kind of past the height of everything now, there is less misinformation out there. But ultimately, you can only take legal advice from somebody who's qualified to give you legal advice. There are places to go if your dog is seized, or if you are in a situation where you think your dog might be in trouble. Obviously, our advice would be to follow the law. So it's all the common sense stuff, really. I think that if you can be in a position, and if you have a dog, I think bearing in mind, I always come at this from my dog, who's a very sociable, friendly kind of dog. And not everybody does have that. People have reactive dogs and they might not be in the position to do this. I always think my dog turns people in a positive way. People look and they think, oh, and they're not sure. And he wins them over with his just absolute charm and good nature. And I think the more that you can do that, then the more you can educate people. Even if it is just a conversation with somebody who stops you in a park or asks you about something, you are a representative of that breed, and you have the power to change people's minds, and have them go away and have a different conversation as a result of that. So I think that's really important. And I think for the general public who maybe have been swayed by the media, or have got a reason to really fear or worry about these types of dogs, hopefully even listening to this might help them. And obviously me is reiterating that, 55,000 dogs
Yeah.
that are exempt are not 55,000 dangerous dogs. And you will have dogs that are reactive or aggressive or whatever it may be in any breed or type. Try not to judge the book by its cover. And if you feel comfortable, even sometimes I have people say to me, I'm scared of dogs. And I say, well, that's okay. We'll stay far away. But if they do feel comfortable to come and say hello and you do get that opportunity, then you never know what magic can happen.
So good. And, I love that. So many XL Bully owners are, in my experience, some of the best trained dog, like they are the best dog owners. They've done such amazing training because they're really having to go, look, my dog is a good dog. And I just think it's so unjust. There are so many dogs in the country who are not given that level of attention and training because they're not big, lumbering, thick-headed dogs. People have to
Yeah.
be concerned about getting near them. And so I think there's something in that, absolutely. If every XL Bully owner took it upon themselves to go, my dog's going to be an advocate for all dogs that look like him. He's going to be, or she's going to be 100% good girl or boy, and just build confidence. That works for all dog owners, I would just say right now. If you have a dog and you're approaching somebody that looks a little bit nervous of your dog, showing that you have some kind of control, even something, a little trick, a little high five. Sometimes I'll teach dogs to do a foot high five so that they're not high fiving with their paw to hand, but they're going paw to foot, because then that person can stay a leg's length away but still have an interaction with that dog. That can be a really nice, just like conversation starter between two people, a dog and a person that aren't necessarily comfy. And I think, Sophie, there's just more for us to do, isn't there, as campaigners, to really change this narrative around, the media have really heavily taught us that the dogs who look like this are scary. That has been really heavily promoted as an idea, in the same way as, adopt, don't shop was a really heavy idea. And now people just have a massive go at anybody buying a puppy because they're like, adopt, don't shop, and it's all they can see now. And actually we need to do something to challenge the narrative that dogs who look like XL bullies are inherently dangerous. And I just invite everybody who's listening that loves dogs into that conversation and what that might look like for us to be able to be curious. I think that's the key, isn't it? Becoming curious again about getting to know dogs, and all of us as dog owners having a heck of a lot more control over our dogs day to day. Is there anything you'd like to leave us with, Sophie, as a final note before we let you go? Thank you so much for all of your amazing time and all the effort that you've put into your campaigns. It's been outstanding.
Thank you. I would just say, for anyone who feels really passionately about a topic, and I know that this was really heightened by the fact that it was all over the media, and it was very much out there already. We were just the group that kind of took control of the XL Bully campaign, let's say. But anybody who's thinking about fighting for something that they believe in, it's just about getting the right people around you and just really having a sensible approach to it. I think really helped us. The amount of support that we had from the likes of yourselves, and reiterating that we weren't just normal dog people. We weren't in this world. So, accepting help and pulling a good team together is what will get you there. But just as a dog owner, I just think we all have a duty to be responsible dog owners, and we feel that as XL bullies even more, as you just said. I know that my dog needs to be better behaved than any other dog around, because he will be the one that will be looked at. And so that's not a bad thing. I enjoy training him, and I get lots of pleasure and satisfaction out of it. So yeah.
Heavy is the head that wears the crown, or the muzzle in this case.
Yeah.
You guys are amazing. And how can we stay in touch with you, Sophie? How can people get hold of you or keep following the work that you guys are doing?
Our main platforms are Instagram and Facebook. So we've got pretty engaged bunch of followers over there. anybody who had donated, the GoFundMe is closed now, but anybody who had donated will still get updates on there. And then our website is really where all of our information about licensing, which, as I said, we didn't reinvent the wheel, but it's a very clear, simple licensing structure. If anybody wants to hear about the alternative, we've also got links to a lot of the research that you've probably shared already, Hannah, previously. So some of the recent research that's gone through Parliament on dog bites and things like that. So a great place to educate.
It's outstanding. She is the lady who knows the most about this, absolutely easily. Sophie Coulthard, it is our absolute pleasure to have had you on The Future of Dogs, and thank you for talking to us.
Thank you.
And that's all for another episode of The Future of Dogs. Big thanks to our sponsor, Amplified Behaviour. Your host and producer is Hannah Malloy. Technical direction, audio and video producer is Mark Goslett. And the graphic designer is James Whipps.